A thriving space sector in Scotland will create high-value jobs, it will benefit the local economy, and also we're going to inspire the future generation of scientists and engineers. Combined with the technologies that companies like Clydespace are developing, is going to open up a brand new applications using space and massive growth in our sector. And the UK is and needs to continue to be at the forefront of that industrial revolution.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to ScotWeek and ScotCon. My name is Gary Carr. I'm a founding board member of ScotWeek and trustee with the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles, now in our 91st year. It's my pleasure to have someone with us today from the science and technology sector. Correntin Guillo, founder of Bird.I, satellite imaging and data. Correntin, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much, Gary, for this nice introduction. First of all, let me just tell you all that this is a great honor, and I'm really, really pleased to be speaking with you, or at least in front of the camera remotely today. As you can hear from my French accent, unfortunately, I'm not Scottish, but deep inside me, I feel as a Scottish space entrepreneur. I've created my company a few years ago in Scotland, and I've never felt so much Scottish since I did this bold move. So I'm really pleased to be here and promote Scotland across the United States, but also across the world, because that's such a great country and a great culture. So today I would like to take the 30 minutes I've got ahead of me there to talk to you about why Scotland is such a great place for creating a startup, being an entrepreneur, but more importantly in the space sector. You might not be aware, but we've got many small, larger organizations in Scotland which operate in the space industry. We are manufacturing spacecraft. It seems that we are manufacturing more spacecraft in Scotland than anywhere else in Europe, with companies like Spire and Clydespace. We are also exploiting spacecraft data, like with Bird.I, my company, or with other companies like Ecometrica, for example, in Edinburgh. And recently we've been told that we'll have a spaceport further north in the close to the Shetland Island there. And I think that's quite an amazing opportunity we've got ahead of us there. And more importantly, when you look at the size of the country, that we are punching so much above the belt there. So rather than talking to you about the space sector in Scotland, I would like first to play a very short video that has been made by the Scottish and the UK governments. So you can appreciate the opportunity we've got right there.
At Clydespace, we design and build very small satellites that you can hold in your hand. And these satellites are used for a number of different things, like science missions or to take pictures of the Earth from space. Clydespace was founded in 2005, and the UK government have played a vital role in helping this company grow to being a world-leading company in our sector today. We are a niche technology business in a new market, and the government has played a great part in helping us to validate our technologies, to develop new technologies, and also to get technologies into space.
Space is exciting and inspiring for a new generation of entrepreneurs. At Bird.I, we empower every individuals and businesses alike to access the best satellite imagery in the world. So with the UK government investment through Innovate UK, we've been able to de-risk our business and raise our first investment round. We help building firms to track the progress and the activities related to their building all over the world in real time.
The space sector is important because space really is a new frontier. We're at the cusp of an industrial revolution in space.
Scotland, we've got organizations which manufacture satellites, and we've got other organizations which exploit the data from space. With the creation of the spaceport, we are now realizing the full potential of the space sector in Scotland.
A thriving space sector in Scotland will create high-value jobs, it'll benefit the local economy, and also we're going to inspire the future generation of scientists and engineers. Combined with the technologies that companies like Space are developing, is going to open up a brand new applications using space and massive growth in our sector. And the UK is and needs to continue to be at the forefront of that industrial revolution. We have partnerships with universities and companies across the UK and Scotland. What's great is the funding that we have had from Innovate UK and the UK Space Agency has encouraged these partnerships, and that's helped us to grow much faster than what we could have on our own.
Great. So once you've got a better understanding of what Scotland is capable to do in the space sector, I would like now to take a bit more time to speak about basically two words that should have never been associated together. This is space and entrepreneurship. For the very good reason is space is an environment where risks are very limited. We don't like taking risks. Failure is not an option. While in fact, entrepreneurship is all about taking major risks and accepting the failure. So how do we bring space entrepreneurship together? Let's start with space. So why is that a good opportunity today to be an entrepreneur in space? Because technology have changed recently, and I think there are three major trends which are getting mature and which enable now new business and more startup opportunities. So the three kind of trends I would like to talk to you about are what we call the new space, cloud solution, I'm sure you've all heard about now, and artificial intelligence. Could be a bit of a buzzword, but I will explain why artificial intelligence is so important in space. So new space, what is it we call new space? So if you look at satellites for the past decades, that was a primary multi-million-dollar super sophisticated piece of equipment weighing many tons that would need to be sent to space, the size of a double-deck bus. And because of the price and the time to develop, this legacy spacecraft, this is why, a failure was not possible until now. However, over the past, I would say 10 years, we've seen some new trends and some new technology developments that made new things possible. And we call this the new space trend because there are a bunch of startups, some of them in the US, but I mentioned also a couple of those in the UK and in Scotland, so Space and Spire, who are leveraging other technology development from mobile phone, from laptops, for instance. And they are building much smaller spacecraft, which are still very capable in some respects, but more importantly, they are much cheaper. And the opportunity to have these small spacecraft cheaper to manufacture is that they're also cheaper to be launched. And more importantly, you can now create what we call large constellations. So rather than sending one spacecraft every 5 years, these companies now are launching hundreds of spacecraft every year. And one of the main benefits of launching many, many spacecraft in space while all orbiting around the Earth is that you've got a much greater acquisition cadence, or we call this the high revisit. So spacecraft are passing much more often over any location on the planet. And one of the main benefits of this is that rather than having a single image, every week or every month, you've got many images every day, and you can start tracking fast-moving assets. The economic world, basically, because the world is moving at such a pace that you need to get every day some images, some data about what's happening. So one of the opportunity we found with this new space trend is that while you've got this large spacecraft making one image every month, and the big image you can see there on the screen there on the left is an image acquired by a double-deck bus, I would say. And the resolution of this image is amazing. We are talking about 30 centimeter resolution. You can see every single small details on this image. But the problem is that you only got one image every month. So the value it really brings is quite limited. The image you can see there at the bottom right is an image from one of these small spacecraft, the size of a toaster, basically. They're a bit more hazy, they're a bit more granular, they're not so great to some respects because the resolution is not as good as with the big spacecraft. But however, with these small spacecraft, you've got an image every day and you can start to track, for example, barges at this grain elevator on a daily basis. One on the other one, you could do this on a monthly basis. Why does it matter? That's where we've discovered that if you take the United States and the Mississippi River, you've got barges going at this grain elevator being loaded with grain, could be corn, for instance, and then they are shipped to the south and the Gulf of Mexico, where they are loaded on much bigger tankers and then exported to the China or to Europe, for instance. And what we found is that traders who are speculating on buying or selling grains, for instance, relies on a report, an export report, which is published every week by the US Department of Agriculture that tell how much grain has been inspected and loaded onto these big tankers. What they can get now with this type of images, and moreover when we count, how many barges you've got at all these grain elevator, is that they've got a daily count of the number of barges who are going down the Gulf of Mexico, down to the south of the Mississippi, and they've got a much more up-to-date information about what's the volume of grain that will be then exported. And when you talk about the financial sector, having this competitive edge, moreover, when you compare to what your competitors do, is priceless. And that's something which is only possible now because of this small spacecraft in large constellation that could track every day the economic activities, while before that was not possible. So this new space trend is a really good opportunity, and I think it comes in full realization when you can associate, we call this the old space, the incumbent space, and the new space together. Now, the other opportunities, and moreover when you talk about startup with limited funding, is how do you prove a product or you prove a technology works? And when you talk about satellite imaging, that produces a lot of imagery. And if you had to buy the hardware to ingest, process, store this imagery, very quickly, the barriers are so high that no startup, no businesses can raise enough capital to be able to exploit this imagery and demonstrate a new product, for instance. Recently, I would say again, the past 10 years, we've seen companies like Google, like Amazon, Microsoft, who have started to open up access to their computing and storage capabilities. And this is something which has really enabled new type of applications and startup to emerge, because you can very easily now rent petabyte, terabyte of storage at a fraction of the cost of buying this own hardware by yourself. And that's something which has really enabled much more a new startup and new opportunities in the exploitation of satellite imagery. One example I would like to take is a company called Descartes Labs. They are based in the US, and Descartes Labs wanted to prove that by aggregating a lot of resources from satellite imagery, and not only one single spacecraft, but different missions at the scale of the globe and on a yearly basis, you can predict the corn yields in the US, but in other countries. And what they've done, despite they were a small, not well-funded startup at the time, is they've made a partnership with Amazon. They raised a little investment to get access to their computing and storage capability, and they've ingested in one single database the 3 data sets from 3 different satellite missions. And you can see from the volume of data there, we are talking about hundreds of terabytes of data which have been stored and processed. And they've been able to demonstrate that by aggregating and processing these data, we can indeed now predict corn yields over the United States before doing this at a much greater scale. That proved the product market fit for them. That proved that this technology could work and you can do this at scale. And then they've been able to raise more investment and to scale up and explore new opportunities on the product or the market side. But this has been only possible because of the lower cost to access cloud and storage capabilities there. Finally, the third major technology breakthrough there is artificial intelligence. I appreciate again, this is very trendy and so on, but when we talk about artificial intelligence in the space industry, this is really about identifying assets in large imagery or how they are changing over time, but doing this better, faster, on a much greater scale than trained human eyes typically. So some of the example we can see, when you train machine learning to look at imagery, is to identify assets such as boats, planes, cars, for instance. But the example I would like to give you is what Facebook has done with a satellite operator recently. The kind of greenish map you can see behind there is a population density map in a country in South Africa. And there is very little you can get from this. There is some different color, but that doesn't tell you where the population is in this remote country. And when you have to bring them electricity or water, you don't know where they are, you don't know where to go. So what Facebook, with their machine learning and artificial intelligence technology did, is that they leveraged the data from a satellite operator called Digital Globe, and they process all this imagery not to detect boat or cars or airplane, but to detect small settlements, small individual houses in Africa. And the result is that now they've got a much better understanding of where every single small settlement is in this country, and they can now bring water, electricity, food, or help as needed because they know where they are. And I think that's quite of the most amazing thing is which is enabled by this technology, the scale we can do this. It's not anymore counting, how many cars you got in a parking, but doing this at the scale of country, like we've got there in Africa. So if we summarize, why space is a pretty good place now to create a startup is because you've got this small satellite in greater numbers. You've got cloud solutions, which are much more affordable. And you've got obviously some artificial intelligence technologies which have been made open source by the world leading organization, Facebook, Google, and others. So let's look at now the entrepreneurship aspect. So what does that mean being entrepreneur? I think there are kind of three key elements when you have to start your startup and be an entrepreneur. The first element is you need a team. Very quickly, you will understand that creating your own company is a good leap of faith you can take. You are the founder, but you are never going to make it alone. You have to find the best people to execute and build a company. So basically, at the end, you need to access talents so you can build the team that will build the company. I think that's one of the reasons I came originally to Scotland. My background, as you can hear from my accent, is France. I moved then to England. And when I thought that I'm going to create my own company and I'm going to recruit the best talents, I thought that Scotland was a great place because you've got within 45 miles, within the central belt, you've got Strathclyde, Glasgow, Edinburgh. You go further north with St Andrews, Stirling. These are some of the best universities in the world, and you can tap into these talents. And from my perspective, when I have to talk about team, this is it. I can only provide some photos for all the great people I've recruited since I created Bird.I, since I moved alone to Scotland and to Glasgow. And the thing I would like to highlight about all these people is that I think over the past 5 years, I had only 2 Scottish nationalities in the team. All the others employees were Australian, India, Malaysian, Pakistan, coming from all over the world. And most of them, I think it's, we did some estimates, around 80% of these guys went through Scottish universities. And not only they came from their country to study in Scotland, but then they decided to stay in Scotland and to grow the economy and the sector, the space sector in Scotland. So, if today I am here in this position and I've enjoyed so much this experience, it's because of them, it's because of all this talent coming over the world, coming to Scotland, being trained, having some amazing degree and skills in Scotland, and then wanted to continue to live and to grow Scotland. And I think that's one of the great opportunity that Scotland is offering when you have to create a company, is they offer you access to amazing talents. The second ingredient, obviously, is you need to get an idea. You cannot just start a business with an idea or at least a product. And for Bird.I, when I started the company, my original mission statement was, I want to democratize the access to Earth observation imagery. Satellite imagery should be available to every businesses and individuals alike. And that has driven me over the past few years. And what I wanted to show you about this is when you start to realize your great ambition, your dream in some respect. So one of the first products we developed was a Netflix for satellite imagery. We managed to aggregate multiple satellites. We exposed them into a very simple kind of Google Maps application. And then we show the imagery to people. And one night, we grab people from different origins, from different places. We ask them some private, personal locations they were interested in, and we show them this location. Not as they are on Google Maps, but how they've been evolving over the past 10 years. Locations they've never been able to revisit, for instance, or they wanted to visit, and we were showing them these images. And all we've done is projected the images onto a white wall and then captured their emotions, their reactions, just to understand, how would you enjoy, how would you like to get access to all these resources? So what I would like to show you now is a very short video showing, this experience and the results of the emotions.
That's amazing. Oh wow, the quality is insane. Can you do that again? I can't believe that.
That's so cool.
Move around. There's some fish. We needed the trees for the shade. There was no way that tree was coming down.
Feels like it could be an invaluable educational tool.
Seeing them like that is amazing.
Are these paintings? Are these real? Daffodils.
Stunning. Like the quality on that is just amazing.
We bring together the best, most up-to-date pictures of our planet from above. So now, for the very first time, you can explore whatever you like, whenever you like. Your world, your view. Bird.I.
It always gives me a big smile when I watch this video, because that was really the idea behind Bird.I. How do we unlock access to this imagery and make them available to individuals in the mass market? Now, you have to learn your lessons. The feedback was very positive, but that doesn't make a business, because people are used to get free access to Google Maps, and they're not willing to pay to get access to this imagery. So you have to understand that to be a business, at the end, you need to get paying customers. And despite, the consumers, individuals who are interested by this, they are not the paying customers. So what we had to do very quickly is to identify what businesses would benefit from accessing this imagery. And we've seen some examples, traders, for instance, cornmeals, there are many applications. But on our end, when we completed what we call a market discovery exercise, we found that the construction sector is the market we need to go after, because you've got construction sites all over the world, so you need spacecraft to monitor them. The size of a construction site could be viewed from space today, and the speed of development of a construction site, whether a few months to few years, is long enough so that with the space assets we've got today, you can monitor a construction site. And this is where we've decided to partner with a company called Zonda. So we merged forces with Zonda 1 year ago Because Zonda is a great data-driven company which is tracking home building activities in the United States. They are tracking every single residential property construction on a regular basis. And they do this with amazing people on the ground, coming, driving to different places and see what's happening. And what we found is that by leveraging our technology and applying it to the construction of a residential property, we can now do this remotely. And obviously the COVID cases last year with travel restriction really accelerated the adoption of this technology. So what you can see on the left there are typically 4 images of residential properties at different stages of construction, you know, from the foundation stage at the top left down to when the property is completed. When we gave access to this imagery to the research team, they were doing now remotely in their office what they were not able to do anymore by driving over the different locations and taking, you know, some ground first-hand feedback from the ground there. And I think that was the first benefit of accessing imagery. But Zonda is ambitious, and they are tracking 60,000 projects all over the US territory. So viewing an image is not enough. At this stage, we have to automate the technology. So what we've done is we've implemented some machine learning techniques to identify automatically the stages you've got on the left, but doing this at scale for the 60,000 projects. And the results, which you can see on the right there, is that today you don't have anymore to view an image and say, oh, this house has just starting, is at the foundation stage, for instance. We tell you what's the status of construction. And the efficiency gain you've got behind this is amazing. The people that were driving or looking at imagery now can focus their time on resources, a much more important task than just counting houses. And that's really the future of building that we are now creating and defining with Zonda. I would like to take now the opportunity to thank you again for the opportunity to share with you what we've done there in Scotland and what we are doing also with Zonda in the US. And I wish you a good and safe end of the day. And I'm open to any questions or contacts if you want after this meeting. Thank you.
Correntin, that was one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. I mean, the ability to see ourselves like we've never been able to see ourselves before. I mean, I think it was you that represent this as the future, but not only the future, but the future truly being now. Simply amazing. How did you come to actually come up with the idea or start this company? Where was your thinking at that time?
Thanks, Gary. I mean, that's a very nice feedback you gave me there. Your question is quite interesting because I would say I ended up in the space industry by mistake. Originally, I was prepared to be a professional rugby player, and I got my first kid pretty young. And at this stage, my wife asked me to take a proper job because rugby player is not a very long career. So I decided to go back to school, get an engineering degree. And I found my first internship in a company called Airbus, which is kind of a big aircraft and satellite manufacturer. And at that time, I was working with satellite imagery, but mainly in the defense industry, because you've got very few companies that really get access to this imagery, and that's the defense or security organizations. And I was just amazed to see all this imagery acquired over the world, and seeing Google Maps out there so out of date, so poor quality in many places. While in fact you've got hundreds of satellites mapping the world, and that's really when I've started to be driven by the wish to democratize the access to this imagery and make this happen. Long story short, it was not possible in France because of the culture primarily. So I moved to the UK to develop further the idea. And again, I faced some barriers or blockers at this stage. And this is back in 2016 that I managed to make this big leap of faith and realize my dream and create Bird.I when I moved further north to Scotland in Glasgow and create Bird.I. And then since we've always been in Scotland and growing in Scotland, and now working with our sisters companies in the US called Zonda.
Well, it's simply fascinating, and the rugby world may have lost you, but it sounds like we owe a debt of gratitude to your wife.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Correntin. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you in ScotCon and ScotWeek this year.
That's great. Thanks, Gary. All the pleasure was mine. Thanks.